Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I promise, letter to the brothers. Actually going to do it. I tried to start this video earlier, and basically I answered a question from the Sangha about relationships, and it was a good lead-in to this Go show, but I think it just needed to stand on its own. So, letter to the brothers. Again, in the context of karma and Nichiren talking about karma, here we go. The Lotus Sutra is the heart of the 80,000 teachings and the core of the 12 divisions of the scriptures, or the scriptures, the text, the captured teachings of Shakyamuni, yeah? Already, if you're anything like me, you're going, 80,000 teachings, you need to figure out what that is. Core of the 12 divisions of Buddhism? What is that? Again, I will remind you, questions like this have come up in my practice since the beginning, and my answer to those questions has been to research them, find documents that were authoritative about what those things are, and post them on threefoldlotus.com, the core study materials. So I've done a lot of footwork for you. Not all of it, but a great deal of it. So if you have questions like that, you mark your text or write the question down about the 12 divisions, head over to threefoldlotus.com after you're through with the podcast. And look on all those green labels. They're buttons, right? And one of them will say 12 divisions. Click on it. New window opens up with a PDF. Answers. Print it out, read it, whatever. So that's, I hope the threefoldlotus.com is a nice, handy 24/7 tool that you can use to answer these kinds of questions. Because the more you answer, the more confidence you have in your understanding of what it is we're practicing. Yeah? Nichiren goes on, the Buddhas throughout the three existences attain enlightenment because they take this sutra as their teacher. In other words, all those who attain Buddha-ness, that's all the Buddhas, in case you didn't get that, have attained Buddha-ness because, and it's important how this is written, they take this sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo, as their teacher. Who's doing the teaching? That's right, you are. You are parent, teacher, sovereign. This is the sutra that instructs you, exposes you, right, to that truth. Only you can instantiate Buddha-ness. Nobody can show it to you, give it to you, find it for you. It's your mind. The Buddhas of the 10 directions guide living beings with the teaching of the one vehicle as their eyes. There it is said yet another way. The teaching as their eyes, that's the Buddha eye. That's the ninth consciousness. Not my ninth consciousness, the ninth consciousness. You have the ninth consciousness. I have the ninth consciousness. That is the Buddha eye. How do you open that Buddha eye? Well, we read a whole long Go show about opening of the eye. It's this process of awakening Gohonzon portal in mind. The mind, instead of being preoccupied with all the stuff of samsara, has also the ability to witness all the stuff of the universe and how it's happening. Buddha-ness. Entering the sutra repository and examining the complete collection contained therein, I find that 2 versions exist of the sutras and treatises brought to China between Yongping era of the latter Han and the end of the Tang dynasty. There are 5,048 volumes of the older translations and 7,399 of the newer translations. Now, we've talked about the Gandhara period in northeastern India, which is now divided amongst several countries, where a lot of translations works from oral tradition into written traditions, different languages. Gandhara had its own script. There are many languages that were captured and buried in clay pots because of this constant fear since Shakyamuni's extinction of the loss of the teachings. Shakyamuni talked about it himself. It's our period, right? This modern era is the era when the danger exists to lose the Lotus teachings altogether. Isn't this the story of the Lotus Sutra? The story of the bodhisattvas emerging from beneath the earth? So Nichiren is talking about these translations as they came to China. Each sutra claims by virtue of its contents to be the highest teaching of all. Because whenever you progress, it's just like learning math in school. You learn numbers, then you learn fractions, then you multiply, divide, your times tables, all of that. New math, I don't know what you call it, but same thing. And then you get through mathematics, and then you take algebra. Oh, now math will make sense. Because this is the most powerful teaching in mathematics. It doesn't negate the earlier teachings. It just says, now you're going to get how to use those teachings, right? And then you get to, I don't know, geometry, trig, I don't know what order they're in. And then you get it to higher maths, all the way to calculus, and even beyond that. Every step of the way. Oh, now this is the most. What? It's the same thing with everything. So why would it be different in Buddhism? Every sutra claims to be now the best, right? I'm sure you've noticed that if you've read more than 2 sutras. So Nichiren's calling it out right here. But that's the nature of evolving teaching, isn't it? Comparison reveals, however, that the Lotus Sutra is as superior to all the other sutras as the skies and space is to the earth. It rises above them like a cloud over the mud on the ground. If other sutras are compared to stars, the Lotus Sutra is like the moon. If they are as bright as torches, bonfires, stars, or the moon, the Lotus Sutra is then as bright as the sun. This is a general comparison. But the Lotus Sutra itself starts out by saying, everything I've taught before this, in conjunction with this, and in the future, is subordinate to this teaching. This Lotus Sutra, this is the way you manifest Buddha-ness. Period. This is the method. More specifically, the Lotus Sutra contains 20 outstanding principles. This should be interesting. The 2 most important are the teachings of the major world system dust particle kalpas ago and numberless major world system dust particles kalpas ago. Here we go with that time thing. In other words, this has always been true. This didn't become true or reasonable at a particular time. No, this is universal, all-time, timelessness, truth. Period. The former is explained in the parable of the Phantom City chapter in the 3rd volume. Suppose someone grinds a major world system into dust, right? He then takes this dust with him and goes 1,000 major world systems toward the east, where he drops 1 particle. He proceeds another 1,000 major world systems eastward and drops a 2nd particle. He continues in this manner, dropping another particle and then another until he has exhausted all the dust particles of the entire world systems. blah, 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 right? And that's the point. This is unfathomable. You cannot calculate it. Then he gathers up all of those major world systems along the route and that he has taken, whether they have received a particle or not. Maybe he missed some. He collects those anyway and reduces them all to dust. Okay, this is like beyond ridiculous, right? But you get the point here. You can't fathom this number. He places these dust particles in a row. You couldn't live enough lifetimes. I mean, allowing one entire kalpa to pass for the placement of each. Oh my goodness. So here we go with time again. So he has an unfathomable, innumerable amount of dust particles. It can't even fit in your head what that number might look like. And then he starts putting them down in a row, but he has a distance of 1,000 kalpas. I don't care if a kalpa is a moment. 1,000 kalpas, that's a long ways. To then put another dust particle down and, I'm going to go put, huh? Okay. When the first kalpa has passed, he places the second particle and then the third until as many kalpas have passed as there are particles of dust. It's just insane, right? The total length of time represented by the passage of all these kalpas is referred to as a period of a major world system dust particle kalpas. Okay, now we have a ruler. It's totally unfathomable. Now that he's set you up to brain pablum, he says, it was this long ago, now that you know, in the remote past indicated by a span of major world system dust particle kalpas, that the three groups of voice hearers, including Shariputra, Mahakashyapa, Ananda, and Rahula, learned the Lotus Sutra from a bodhisattva who was the 16th son of the Buddha Great Universal Wisdom Excellence. Is that real? Who in their right mind, let alone any mind, fathomed that human beings were around at a time that was far older than the universe? I mean, far older. If you can even begin to abstract the amount of time Nichiren's talking about and Shakyamuni was talking about, we know through science that the entire universe is 13.8, 13.9 billion years old. Well, that might be a kalpa. We're talking Google kalpas. And we go, start talking like a baby because it, right, is beyond understanding. All we can do is abstract that this is, and no, there were no Buddhas walking around, bodhisattvas walking around back then. What's the cliche? What's the meme? Back in it, well, there's several, right? Back in the olden days, the OG. No, the idea here is that these Shariputra, Mahakashyapa, Ananda, Rahula, Buddha Great Universal Wisdom Excellence, these are adjectives, types of mind, characters, expedient means for teaching, yeah? In other words, this one vehicle, Myoho Renge Kyo, has always been, right? Because the engine of life has always been. It has no characteristics itself, it's potential manifesting. What it manifests has characteristics, yeah, the 10 factors, the 5, all of that. But the formations, that's just energy with action, energy cause and effect, happening. That's all we can say about it, is that's happening. It's momentum. Deluded by evil influences, negative influences, influences that hold you to your samsaric attachments. However, they eventually abandoned the Lotus Sutra. They fell back into the Flower Garland Wisdom Great Collection or Nirvana Sutra, or further down to the Mahavajracana, Profound Secrets or Meditation Sutra, or even backslid all the way to the Hinayana teachings of the Agama Sutras. Continuing this descent, they fell back through the practice of goodness in the human and the skies and spaceborne worlds, and finally into the paths of evil, or evil. It should replace that word, right? But we're talking about lower paths, samsaric paths, attached paths, right? Hell, hunger, animality, right? Those paths of possessions and identity. During this period of major world system dust particle kalpas, they were most often born in the hell of incessant sufferings, of course. Born, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. Moment to moment, momentum, as they were reinstantiating being, they encapsulated those moments of being within the avarice of ownership and identity, so they suffered. I mean, the two go together. If all your thinking is about possessions, position, power, sex, eating, land, religion, well, you're going to constantly be stressed and anxious. But that's because you're not living in the present and into the next moment. You're living into the dragging along the past with you. That hurts. Sometimes they were born in the 7 great hells, or less frequently in the more than 100 hells. On very rare occasions, they were born into the world of hungry spirits, animals, or asura. There it is. The world of hunger, the realm of animality or anger. And only after kalpas, as many as dust particles, were they able to be born again in the human or the skies and spaceborne worlds. Higher levels of experiencing life, right? Little less lizard brain, little bit more toward our dignity of humanity and our potential. Nichiren is making this very general, broad statement about the qualities of our own life experience. He's not saying some people are animals, some people are evil. These are all experiences in the mind, attitude and intent. There it is again. The second volume of the Lotus Sutra states, quote, "He will constantly dwell in hell, strolling in it as though it were a garden, and the other lower paths of existence he will look on as his own home." End quote. Those who commit the 10 evil acts fall into the hell of repeated rebirth for torture, or the hell of black cords, where they must spend 500 lifetimes or 1,000 hell years. Those who commit the 5 cardinal sins fall into the hell of incessant suffering and are born again in this world after remaining there for 1 medium kalpa. Now, we read a lot of stuff like this in the sutra, not only the Lotus Sutra, but all sutras, right? 2 things to remember, and I have to make this clear again. It's easy to fall prey to our imagination and start attaching reality to these terms, okay? When Shakyamuni was teaching this 3,000 years ago, he was dealing with a culture of people who were total mystics. They had magical minds. They barely had an identity. So he spoke to them in terms that they could understand. Eventually, this lessens, right? And in the Lotus Sutra, it's all but gone. But it's still the Lotus Sutra was taught 3,000 years ago too, so it's still in there. And Nichiren uses it. But we're modern people. So you need to understand, please, that these multiple life, these 5,000, whereas born again in the world after remaining there for medium kalpa, a number that none of us can understand, right? What was the story? Well, I'll paraphrase it. If you go to a friend's house and you have to, remember when you were a kid and you, hi Mrs. So-and-so come out and play or whatever. Yes, just wait a minute. She's still getting ready or he's still getting ready. And you would wait outside. And you would sit, maybe you sat on the front steps while you waited. No problem. That's how things were done. And you waited there maybe 5 minutes and it went by. Maybe you played with harmonica, whatever, or you just looked at the street. 5 minutes wasn't that long. They came out. Let's go play, whatever. Now, that period of time, 5 minutes. Yeah, you had to wait. You sensed it, but it didn't take that long. Now, same exact situation, but in order to wait for your friend to come out, you have to sit on top of the picket fence. A picket fence with each board is a sharp point, and you got to sit your butt on those points and wait. How long will 5 minutes seem on that picket fence? I was going to say point made, but sorry. Right? Our experience of time, especially when our experience isn't being all that fun, seems eternal. That's what this means. If those who commit 10 evil acts fall into the hell, repeated rebirth for torture, or the hell of black course, where they must spend 500 lifetimes or 1,000 hell years. Yeah, it may seem like that sitting on that picket fence. You've made some rotten decisions. You haven't nurtured your Buddha-ness, your dignity of life. Your attitude sucks. And every moment you spend in that sucky attitude sucks. For a long time. That's why our little bursts of joy seem so fleeting. But when we're unhappy or miserable, it's going on forever. That's what this is. Expedient means, remember? Why is it then that those who abandon the Lotus Sutra fall into the hell of incessant suffering and have to stay there for such an unimaginably great number of kalpas? The offense of discarding one's strong resolve in the sutra must at the time seem nowhere near as terrible as killing one's parents. Nevertheless, even if one killed one's parents in 1, 2, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000, or even 100 million lifetimes, one would not have to remain in hell for a period of major world system dust particle kalpas. So now he's making an association. Killing one's parents, terrible cause, yeah? Terrible action. You're manifesting the exact opposite of the dignity of life. Horrible thing to do. And yet, the karmic effect that you would live with could be expiated over time. It may be inconceivable time, but it could be expiated. But if you turn your back on Buddha-ness, then there's no hope. So that's even worse. Making a very clear point here of the profound necessity for proper attitude, intent, right? Practice of Buddha-ness. Even if one were to kill 1, 2, 10,000, 100,000, here we go with the numbers again, or as many as 100 million Buddhas, would one have to dwell in hell for a span of numberless major world system dust particle kalpas? The three groups of voice hearers, however, had to suffer through a period of major world system dust particle kalpas, and the great bodhisattvas through a period of numberless major world system dust particle kalpas, just because of how close they'd gotten, right? Because of the offense they committed by discarding the Lotus Sutra. This shows what an unimaginably terrible offense it is. To put this simply, finally, when one strikes at air, one's fist will not hurt. But when one hits a rock, one feels pain. The offense of killing an evil person is minor compared to the offenses of killing a good person, which is grave. Now, that's an interesting distinction. You wouldn't attribute that to Buddhism necessarily, would you? Because as Buddhists, killing somebody, hurting somebody, it's an unthinkable thing to do. Because our focus is on Buddhism, attitude and intent. Making that kind of a cause, lending that kind of action, moment to moment to moment, to our energy, where's the dignity in that? If one kills someone who is not one's kin, like that's a distinction, it is like striking mud with one's fist. But if one kills one's own parents, it is like hitting a rock. So now I find I have to remind you, don't take this outside and run with it. This is medieval Japan. He's talking to samurai. They deal in death every day. That is their method of adjudication. That is the court. That is the law. If the ruling clan says, we don't like that, okay, we go out and behead people. Samurais wake up every morning thinking, this is the day I die. I must honor and behold myself with such dignity and higher standards that if I were to die today, I would die with honor and dignity. That's the samurai story. It's about death and killing all the time. Well, obviously, Nichiren is adopting terms they can hang on to. They get it. It's not for you and I, unless we mollify it, modify it, make it relevant, that our swords today are words. Yeah, be careful how we wield our words, our actions, physically, mentally. Oh yeah, attitude and intent. I love it. A dog may bark at a deer without having its skull broken, but if it barks at a lion, its bowels will rot. Yeah, probably not a battle the dog would be wise to undertake. An Ashura who tried to swallow the sun and moon had his head shattered into 7 pieces. There's that 7 again. Because Devadatta harmed Shakyamuni Buddha, right? He tried to kill him. The earth split open and swallowed him alive. And yet there he was the next day, yeah? I mean, you got to understand this storytelling. This is about cause and effect. How do we imprint the momentum of karmic energy of which we are manifest? How are we imprinting it? How are we influencing it? And by that, the energy all around us. That's what this is about, folks. The seriousness of an offense depends on the person one harms. Okay, that's one factor, but yeah, that's a very complex statement, though. And what it's saying is, it isn't because of the position the person has or the sex of the person. It's about the relationship. What is your relationship with that person? Is that person generally considered an honorable person? Do you treat them such? Or are they a terrible person in an honorable position? Do you treat them such? So there's a relationship question, intent, and attitude, right? Because you can't separate them. And then there's the repercussions. But the repercussions, they may be societal because of the person's position, good or bad. But that's not as relevant as your maintenance of their position, right? Even if it's a pauper, if you hold them in high esteem and somehow you harm them, the effect on your karma will be far greater than even if they were an honorable person, but you didn't think much of them and you maybe accidentally killed them. Your attitude and intent far different. That repercussion is the repercussion we're talking about. That's where Buddhism lies, in your attitude and intent. Makes sense, right? So where this says depends on the person one harms, it would be more useful to know that the seriousness of an offense depends on the considerations and impressions you have of the person one you harm. That would be more accurate, yeah? The Lotus Sutra is the eye of all the Buddhas. It is the original teacher of Shakyamuni Buddha. There's that self-teaching thing again. Himself, the Lord of Teachings. If one discards one word or even one brushstroke of the sutra, the offense is graver than that of one who kills one's parents 10 million times over, or even of one who sheds the blood of all the Buddhas in the 10 directions. This is why those who forsook the Lotus Sutra had to suffer for a period of major world system dust particle kalpas, or numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. Moreover, it is extremely difficult to meet a person who expounds this sutra exactly as the sutra directs. I can attest to that, my friends. It is even more difficult than for a one-eyed turtle to find a piece of floating sandalwood, or for someone to hang Mount Sumeru from the sky with a fiber from a lotus stem. Now, these are references to other stories in other sutras. I love that sandalwood, one-eyed turtle in the sandalwood hollow story. But these are references also to the various other supposed honorable teachers of his day teaching incorrectly, erroneous views, made up stuff, right? Putting things in the wrong order. Nichiren's all about correcting that, right? We all should be. And we live in an age and of time right now where there's a bunch of bull out there, self-serving, using the words of Nichiren and Shakyamuni for their own agendas. It's painful. And Nichiren's addressing that here. He continues, the great teacher Tuen, was the disciple of the Tripitaka master Xuanzang and the teacher of Emperor Daizong. He was a sage who not only was well versed in the Sanskrit and Chinese scriptures or texts, but also had memorized all of Shakyamuni Buddha's sutras. The Buddha's ashes fell from the tip of his writing brush, and light shone forth from his teeth. He was a very accomplished scholar of Buddha's sermons, yeah? His contemporaries respected him as though he were the sun and moon, and people in the latter ages earnestly sought out his teachings as guides for living. Even so, the great teacher Dengyo denounced him, stating that though he praises the Lotus Sutra, he destroys its heart. This statement means that though he intended to praise the Lotus Sutra, in the end, he destroyed it. And we know that story, right? He saw the greatness of the Lotus Sutra, but he wanted to be greater. Ego. So he manipulated some of the texts. He added his own. He moved things around. It's like owning a Ferrari, but being obsessed with being better. So you take the wheel wells off your Volkswagen Beetle from 1964 and you put them on the Ferrari. See, this is better. What are you doing? Right? The Tripitaka master Shan Wu Wei, there's another choice character, was once the king of Udayana in India. He abdicated the throne, became a monk, and in the course of his Buddhist practice, journeyed through more than 50 countries in India, states, finally mastering all the esoteric and exoteric teachings of Buddhism. Later, he went to China and became the teacher of Emperor Xuanzang. Every true word priest in both China and Japan has since become his follower. In spite of his having been such a noble person, he died suddenly, tormented by Yama, the Lord of Hell, though no one knows why. Well, we do, but I, Nichiren, have confidence that this happened because though Shan Wu Wei was the first votary of the Lotus Sutra, when he read the Mahavajrayana Sutra, he declared it superior to the Lotus Sutra. Why would he do that? Similarly, it was not because they had committed the 10 evil acts or 5 cardinal sins that Shariputra, Madhyalayana, and the like were doomed to wander through the evil paths of existence for a period of major world system particle kalpas or numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. Nor was it because they had perpetrated rebellion or any other of the 8 offenses. It was because they had met someone who was an evil influence and discarded the Lotus Sutra to make strong resolve in provisional sutras. Advantaged themselves. They saw an opportunity, and they crapped on what they knew to be true in order to make personal gains. This is the story of mankind, right? Forever. The great teacher Tendai commented, quote, if they encountered an evil friend, they will lose their true mind. True mind means the mind that believes in the Lotus Sutra, while lose means to betray one's strong resolve in the Lotus Sutra and transfer one's allegiance, attitude and intent, to other sutras. The sutra reads, quote, but when they are given the medicine, they refuse to take it, end quote. Tendai stated, those who have lost their minds refuse to take the good medicine, even though it is given to them. Lost in the sufferings of birth and death, moment to moment, in attachments, they run away to another land. Oh, there's the land thing again, right? Pure land, Buddha land, other land. They're no longer focused on the Buddha land of maximal experience and wonder. They've now slipped into the avarice of whatever their pursuits are. Where are we time-wise? All right. We will continue in the next video with, since this is so, believers in the Lotus Sutra should fear those who attempt to obstruct their practice more than they fear bandits, burglars, night raiders, tigers, wolves, or lions, even more than invasion now by the Mongols. Stay steadfast, my friends. On page 33. Write that down so I remember where we are. Right. Stay steadfast, resolved in your practice. Take care of your health. Don't forget, please like and subscribe. That helps us propagate this resource, which is the purpose for this resource. Yeah. threefoldlotus.com, Lulu, the print books, the ebooks on threefoldlotus.com. Thank you so much for your support, your practice. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Take care of your health. Be in love with life. All right. Bye for now.